This is a tour of Mapping the Multitute, an exhibition of contemporary Korean photography. This is the case when many layers of meaning are combined in one project. I will try to tell you about at least two of them. We are going to answer the question of why we need to go to the museum and why we need to work with museum space. Since this is an exhibition of 11 contemporary photographers, it seems that we simply need to properly show and tell you about every one of them. But in the museum center Площадь Mira, we always come up with some additions for the best projects. This hall at the so-called White Halls is already a whimsical space, but we made a new large addition to this exhibition. It's a new architecture. We are talking about expanding the space of photography. We are now at the center entrance of the exposition, and here we see a design technique, a fragment of an image of one of the artists. This is a fragment from the series of Seok-woo SONG, the only photographer of this exhibition, who did a performance. We see here how four people are united either by fabric or by surface. This creates an image of a community, and I would even say that of an intellectual community. This image turned out to be very symbolic and important. This exhibition is a part of our 14th Krasnoyarsk Museum Biennale called Mira Neurons. That is the reason why we have this wonderful symbol here. It's the curatorial key or code to understand our message. This empathy between people is hidden inside their brains in these mirror neurons. One more important detail is that the symbol is a primary architecture to some extent. There is such a concept in old ancient books, tabernacle. It was a portable temple among the ancient Israelites, which the concept of a temple originated from. So this gazebo, a place to have a conversation and a canopy at the same time, meets us and invites us inside the space. The exhibition is called Mapping the Multitute. This is a literal quote from the further mathematics. Using sophisticated mathematical language, it says that everything is a set, and if the set is displayed in another set, then there is a rule of similarity between them. Dialogue and communication. Everything is a multitude. An individual person is also a multitude. People, many people, that's also a multitude. Nature is a multitude. This exhibition has several key topics that reveals the philosophical and mathematical concept in a sensual, social and personal reality.
Философское и математическое, в общем, раскрывается в чувственной, социальной, персональной, природной реальности.
Another important concept in set theory, introduced by Paolo Virno, the author of the Grammar of Sets, is the so-called general intelligence. The metaphor of general intelligence is also present here. General intelligence is a desired tool and a stage of development that will make everyone happy. Approaching this wall, we can find the same typographic design move, which is probably a set too. It consistently reflects everything in each other. Another important moment for me is when you stand here and bring your eye to the beginning of this ray. When you do this, people around you are supposed to have the feeling that this is the direction of your gaze, the angle of view. This is a look inside the space, inside the exposition, and the form of this look is also a reflection of the internal architecture. Let's boldly face this broken, complex, diverse multitude. I would highlight 2 or 3 major themes that are present in the space. They intertwine with it and could be also found in the artworks. The first is mapping the multitude of nature into the multitude of a man into modern civilization. These dramatic relationships between the elements and modern technosphere are reflected in the work of Sun Pil-han. He is the citizen of the world, a traveler with a camera who explores global warming and ice melting in one of his series.
В общем, исследует в одной из своих серий тему глобального потепления и таяния льдов.
Here we organized such an Icelandic Norwegian fjord into which we climbed through a series of 3 largest photographs of this exhibition.
Серию из 3 крупнейших, наверное, на этой выставке фотографий. Вот это вообще называется
It's called The Adventure.
Искатель приключений.
We see how the highly Icelandic glacier descends into the sea and collapses. According to the author and some ecologists, it happens due to human impact on the climate. But what we see is a small boat against the background of a giant blue glacier, towering mountains above it, above the sea. This superhuman element sets the scene for the sublimity that makes a person extremely small, or vice versa, gigantic. Like the icebergs, the form of these rocks is bizarre. There is an important nuance and a hint for spatial design. Melting ice raises the level of oceans. Metaphorically, our ice begins to melt as well, and along the long wall starts the series of the same author entitled My Sea. We see the horizon and strange objects and creatures in the foreground between the coast and the sea, and sometimes in the tide itself. This series is in a slight blur.
И вся эта серия, она в таком легком размытии представлена. Ну вот яркий пример мы видим.
A striking example, we see a figure of a woman who is basically out of focus.
Она также колеблется на.
Her shape is also fluctuates, like waves.
Нужно добавить, что вторым названием.
It should be noted that the second title of the series is My Dreams, or The Sea I Dreamt. It gives us another clue to the series. Since everything is vague, uncertain, and inaccurate in a dream, it amazes and shocks us. Like, for example, this globe.
Не тонет, как мячик у девочки Маши, да?
We can see now the development of this element and this theme. From the flooded bridge, which we will see again in the photograph of another artist, to this absolutely wonderful quote from the painting of the 19th century. Someone will see Turner here, someone will even recognize Claude Monet, but with this famous painting that gave us name to the Impressionism, Impressions, Sunrise. It is hidden somewhere, and actually, such serious topics, powerful retrospectives, end with the panel called Waterfall. That is the glacier melted, turned into a waterfall, which is predicted by some ecologists could raise the sea level by 60 meters. Even an element of catastrophism can be read here. Opposite the sea, as if one on the shore, another theme of this exhibition begins. The theme of the personal world, personal space, and shared history. This series is called 3001. The series belongs to a female photographer, Ji-yoon Kim. She researches the phenomenon of the cheapest food in modern Korea. 3,000 won is $3. You can only afford a cup of noodles for this money. So she went around a certain number of markets and street vendors. As the author says, this is a unit of some kind of human everyday life. Food for 3,000 won is the bare minimum you can sustain. This is the job that brings very little money, but it is extremely demanding. It is not a business. You can't get much with it. It's not even the nature of survival, but of human life in modern Asia in these climatic conditions. In this photo, you can see the basic form. Noodles are being dried. From this series of everyday life, of men's, but mainly of women's labor, we can look into the faces of these grandmothers and another series by a female photographer, Andrey Yoon. In these cute portraits, she touches one of the most difficult and painful pages of Korean history. The series is called Comfort Women. The story is about a collective trauma that cannot be healed. But how it is being treated is really an important topic. Korea was occupied by militaristic Japan during the Second World War. Teenage girls were very often taken to the so-called comfort stations, where they were forced to intersexual slavery. Many of these young women died. But in the memory of this violence is very much alive in modern Korea, and as ashes of class, it knocks in the hearts of the young people. A special monument was built opposite the Japanese embassy. On this bench sits a bronze girl who looks towards the embassy with a silent question, demanding the justice. Every Wednesday, students gather near the monument and manifest their burning pain and want. They do this because Korean society believes that they did not receive a true apology and compensation. And the heroines of these photos are very same women after more than 70 years. Today there are only 18 of them. All South Korea treats them with great depredation and love. They call them grandmothers or halmoni. This series of 6 small photographs is a farewell theme of human sympathy, empathy, and at the same time the identification of a nation. I really like the final phrase of the artist, which expresses her hope, especially as this photograph suggests. Maybe out of this darkness, beauty will be born. Out of this solidarity, out of the memory of these dark times. Now we will move to the central space to see what is moving force of the whole exhibition process. Here, along the axis of symmetry of the whole, we will find that everything that we see from this side, we will see through this line on the other side as well. We have seen the stories of women, and there we will find one more story. We have seen water, and we will find water in there too. It is a system of internal connections. Even if they may not be so obvious to the visitors and not so important to them, subconsciously they notice these connections. An important detail should be added here. The curator of this exhibition is Andrey Martynov, a long-time partner of the museum. A man who has devoted his entire life to the research and promotion of high culture of the East. He has more expertise than any of the Russian curators with photographers from Korea, Taiwan, Japan, and to some extent China. He is building a bridge to deliver this remarkable civilization and culture, which is completely different from Europe to us. In this Biennale, thanks to such a project, we managed to connect the two ends of Eurasia. On the one hand, we have a very large project from Berlin, where more than 30 artists living in Berlin provided us with their works. On the other hand, we have a quite representative sample chosen by Andrey from this important modern civilization of South Korea. I say this out of respect for the curator and photographers, but also for our function here. These images are already meaningful, multi-layered subjects. But as in any great work, meanings can be added to them. The Biennale reveals, first of all, the theme of empathy, a mirror of relations, the reflection of the one thing in one another. These photographs made it possible to do so. And the space that we created enhances the effect that these images bear. Andrey is a curator, but I am more of a spatial architecture arranger who settled works in this space, and at the same time attached additional meanings to those beautiful ones that already exist. This is actually my story today. Of course, we do not forget to cover the main concepts of the authors, but these things already exist independently of us in the world. The photographs had already been exhibited and will be on display further on. But what we want to show you is the uniqueness of this exhibition. It is impossible to convey it on the internet, because only your personal experience, your bodily existence in this complex multi-layered labyrinth space generally interests additional meanings. And here is the photo that was included in our epigraph. Seok-woo SONG with his series Wandering, Wandering. We can see 5 large images which he uses as a performance in a natural landscape on the seashore. And in an artificial landscape, as in the center of the metropolis, in some empty, abandoned parking lot, where the same guys are already lined up in a different geometry. We also see how the markings that are drawn here resonate with these verticals of Seoul skyscrapers. At the same time, we see the border. This important metaphor of meaning of this photo allows to understand the architectural structure, which is a ray. Projection ray goes from point to extension in this very spot. A ray is a grade, as it is. It's a direction of glance, a solid angle. As they say in geometry, it's a volumetric climate of our vision. And it's still demarcation. The word demarcation is extremely significant for the Korean mentality. We are aware of these events of the 20th century, when the country was divided into two, South and North Korea. And now we should slightly touch upon this historical, political, and simply tragic phenomenon. The Berlin Wall was gone before our eyes. The Korean Wall still resists. This theme of the border is complemented by dramatic content. So, when young people do their performance, we have the right to add these meanings especially to this photo. And when they blend into interior, I mean the photographer, with his performance artist, more plots arise. His body somehow marks man-made spaces, be it a workshop or a car park. I really like this detail. The figures of two young people who are manifesting the gesture of empathy, of mirror neurons. Two heads are bent towards each other, even put to rest on each other's shoulders. Hands are removed, bodies do not touch, and only the brain and mirror neurons live in our brain, begin to transmit an important message. Each of us can decipher it. Seok-woo SONG is probably being the most artistic of all photographers on the exhibition when he documents his performance. It is important for us that they are displayed on this fluttering wall. Why is it important? Because here you can talk about the physicality of space, about some kind of spike and connections of human masses or individuals with their environment. Under the apotheosis of this bodily architecture, we have this yellow giant. This is a fragment, a quote, another exposition design technique that we took from the series of an American citizen, a female photographer, Andrey Yoon. She was born in America, and one day she came to the homeland of her ancestors to get no Seoul. What caught her attention and what she devoted her research to this great number of fashionably dressed elderly people. So, the series Fashionable Old Men and Women, or Elderly Fashion, turned out to be in the center of our vast space. And what's more, this character, a very elegant and fashionable old man, has become some kind of protagonist, a character who takes the right to speak for everyone in this huge space, an almost 4-meter man. It's a great sport to take a photo, but he also performs, as it turned out later, several useful functions. The north is actually behind this wall. Taking this into consideration, we might recall this giant Kim Jong-il monument, which dominates the landscape in North Korea. But unlike those great Kims, this person is nameless and quite friendly dressed. He is a funny pop artist called out to replace totalitarianism. Well, let's not be afraid of this word. Horror that lies behind this demarcation line in the north, which is actually the last kind of such a regime left from the big wars and giant social political experiments. Well, it's one of the interpretations. It is also very important that almost from this character's head, the walls fly out and cascade down the steps like the same waterfall. And what does it form? This abstract form, this architecture allows us to think about many things. I have already said that this is the border. On the other hand, it's a direction of glance. So, we brought to the entrance wall the actual configuration of zones, which these walls form in the plan. We have it now on the entrance wall in the forms of grey multitudes. It's a direction of glance. By making this performance of architecture as a nod to Seok-woo SONG series, we also measure something. On the other side of this border, we put a series of Shinwoo Kim, which is called border spaces or night tracers. The plot of his series is border zones of cities, and in particular zones near the airports of two giant metropolises, Seoul and London. He took pictures of some buildings, non-residential premises, even no longer functional ones, under the tracing lights of aircraft landing and taking off. The series consists of 10 works. It found its place on the other side of our axial architecture and thus emphasizes the borderline. Now we must look at the sides of our axis. Here we have two images depicting architecture that are symmetrically displayed, shot by the same photographer who shot at the sea, Sun Pil-han. In one work, we see a screen with a painted image of some old temple, obviously Korean. It questions virtuality and reality, as it's in virtual canvas we see a real door that you can use to go behind the wall, into this painted theater. On the other side, we see a completely torn-off concept, since these plain walls are again making a connection to this architectural photography. This is another false facade, and we see that the cloth covering the real reconstructed building is a crooked mirror, or rather an image in a crooked mirror. It's hard to instantly grasp if it is a reality or Photoshop image. And it turns out that it is Photoshop transferred to fit the size of reality. It's like an installation or public art, which the photographer took a shot of and got another message, a photographic one. The point is that Sun Pil-han is taking giant stretch photographs of buildings. And this floating, flowing mirror is very helpful to our mirror neurons. As mesmerizing as it is, it makes you stop here. From that pink color, let's take a look into this little compartment, as it conveys the topic of another female photographer, JeongMee Yoon. She has been doing a project called Pink and Blue for many years already. She once paid attention to the phenomenon that all children's toys are divided in two colors. Pink is for girls and blue is for boys. That's how she began to take pictures of children against the background of carpets on which their toys and clothes are corresponding colors were put.
На фоне ковров, на которые разложены их игрушки, одежда с соответствующим цветом. И у нее огромное количество таких вот фотосюжетов. Здесь всего лишь
She has a huge number of such images. Here we have only two of them for each gender. In the context of our conversation today, this is undoubtedly a multitude. And this little person, a child, is reflected in everything. These are their objects of desire. Yet it is very important that we have here, in this axis of symmetry, is a mirror image. But on the other hand, as the author emphasizes, it is a kind of social criticism, a criticism of consumer society. Whole factories are built to captivate parents and children with purchases, and giant industries making a profit with pink and blue all over the world. This is not a local phenomenon, but a global one, so she ends up shooting in America. I think she could do it in Russia too. Here we come across the important thing when the giant corporations are including themselves in our personal space, in our families, and we cannot do anything to prevent it. This moment is already encrypted in our subconscious. So when you take your child home from the maternity ward, you put a blue ribbon, if it's a boy, and a pink one, if it's a girl. And here, in this moment of uncertainty of the border, when your personal warmth is intertwined with ungracious factories and stock exchanges getting into your most private space. This is a paradox, an oddity, which the author points out and fights with it a little. Although it is impossible to defeat it, it is worth showing. The topic of gender and gender differences is very relevant for this exhibition. As a continuation of this theme, we will see now that what is up inside has both feminine and masculine shades. Even in elderly fashion series, both women and men play the game of social coding by wearing bright colors, accessories, etc. And right next to this beauty and brightness, we placed an absolutely faded series of the young photographer Jaegu KANG, who shows two series called Recruit and Reserve Soldier. The Recruit is a black and white series of simple, completely standard, almost forensic photographs of young men who were drafted into army. It is important for the author to show that the army is a multitude that denies personality. He says in his text that he also went through it and never understood what the humanitarian value of this community, this institution is. In a slightly criticizing manner, he shows that the mechanical repetition of these portraits, this line, this system, he wants to emphasize that this is the simplest set or multitude and it works according to the principle of mass production. We must, of course, keep in mind that military service is extremely important for South Korea, since North Korea is ready for war and there is no truce between two countries. But on the other side, we show it through the axis of symmetry. Color starts to appear in the images, and these are the people who are called to army reserve training. Now they wear the old uniform that they keep in their closet at home, they have a haircut, and their postures suggest that the young people have somehow overcome the negation of their personality, their identity.
Как-то преодолевают молодые люди эту тему нивелирования своего образа и своей идентичности в повторном призыве.
Dwelling upon the gender theme, it is worth looking into the farthest room of our exhibition space. This project is called The Virginia's Room. The author is a female photographer, Seok-woo. The inspiration for this series is the work of the British writer Virginia Woolf, who was the first to create such a feminist precedent. A woman was a writer, making a living by writing in the first half of the 20th century. The photographer was hooked by the important phrase of Virginia Woolf in the novel A Room of One's Own. A woman of the 20th century needs only two things to realize herself as a creative person, as a writer: £500 a year and her own room. And keeping this phrase in mind, Seok-woo made a deal with modern Korean women that they would let her visit their creative spaces. She took pictures of this in terrace, either the hostesses inside, or with their reflections, or even with their shadows, presence or breath. She managed to create such a suite of really transparent, white, light photographs, which seemed to be about the interior, but at the same time, about the inner world of a modern woman who achieved equality with men. This topic we could rhyme with the 3,000 won story. A survival unit, 3,000 won for noodles, is probably the same £500 a year. The same bare minimum, and also a very important topic today. The threshold beyond, which is the relation of creative essence of a person begins, be this person male or female. I must say that among 11 photographers, there are 5 women, almost a half, maybe one more message from the curator. Talking about the boundaries, we need to highlight one more series. Behind the wall, with the painted facade, we have a series of Taejin Kim called Random Connections. He is a kind of contactee in a monochrome black and white space. Being an extrovert person, he began to photograph strange fragments of uncertainty. It's hard to explain, but something in them caught his attention. Therefore, here we see some fractions of light thrown on the floor with debris. And all these are places that are not inside the building, nor the facades, but some fragments of uncertainty, like a night intersection in park, a shiny handrail that casts a beam of light, or staircases leading into the depth and darkness. And he searches for more in this darkness. The black and white light and shadow mythology can be built around this minimalistic photography. The work of the final author, whose work we can see from the point of view of the yellow giant, as he looks into the distance Wright did. There is a large print on the farthest wall. We can see in it many reflections of our actual already local context. This is the work of the photographer Seok-woo Kim. This is just one image from his series Riverside, in this case, a river side. He was really mesmerized by the flooding of the main river in Seoul. When the river overflows its banks and floods the embankments of the parks, this is actually a situation that we had this summer in Krasnoyarsk. Close to the opening date of the Biennale, the Yenisei had also almost reached the maximum, flooding the entire embankment. And the people of both Krasnoyarsk and Seoul went to see these extraordinary events. For us, it was a spring flood, and for them, it's a result of summer rains. It is also very important for the exposition scenario that we already have water here, flooding the space from the melting icebergs. Of course, I like that vertical and horizontal lines are connected here, such an outstanding constant. And if we look to the right, we will see a part of another series of Seok-woo Kim called Beautiful Days, or Better Days. It is no coincidence that we conclude our exposition with such a joyful tone for the great multitudes of communities. We see some winter activities here, and ice fishing competition in particular. Densely standing tents with a fisherman inside of each. How much fish do you need, right? It's a question to consider. On the other side, we see roller coasters in residential areas of a big city. We see a snow sculpture park, which presents both architectural fairy tales and some characters of pop culture and mythology. Well, in this case, it is an inventor of Gangnam Style, and not so long ago composed style super famous all over the world. Or people chilling in the vicinity in plant, reflecting in entire space. This series perfectly displays another multitude, a huge number of people gathered in one space and simultaneously engaged in a common cause. In our case, the cause is a common rest, but this is also a reflection of society, a community without any kind of military regulations, without capitalist forms of productions. It's a great story when so many people are together in one place. It might be an overpopulated Asian visiting card. Here is a fantastic photo also. During the cherry blossom season, crowds of people come together to this labyrinth. They create a community or a multitude with these flowers.
Создают уже сообщество или множество с этими цветами. И это тоже очень интересное отображение в какой-то своей геометрии.
Or public pools in which the Korean nation spend their time. It reminds me of a painting by Len Kosov that heavily influenced me. It is an image of a pool where a lot of people sit, and the work is called The Human Clay. This is the powerful name, and the painting is outstanding on the verge of abstraction and figurativeness. It is a concept of some kind of fluid in which a person, a mass of people, create material out of which new society can be born. Another photo and another hit piece, title 1. Two pools are now reflected in each other. This one reflects the pool in the very river that sometimes tends to overflow. We can see each person there, and each has their own style of clothing. At the same time, they form the very multitude, the type of community that we started talking about in the beginning. These are not old forms of co-organization, but some new ones, which are arranged according to the principle of individuality or solidarity. We walked around all our nooks and crannies in this swinging multi-layered wall space. As a farewell, I would like to show you one more way to dialogue between the exhibition space and another exhibition. We decided with the curator Thibaut de Ruyter, who made the «Очень милая выставка» on the floors below, that he will put one piece here. It is also a border. This is the line that the German artist Friederike Feldmann asked to draw. She made a big instruction, and now we have a 3.5 meter line, which is a paraphrase of the idea that, as I tried to explain, holds the whole project together. These are subtle things, but this big story was supposed to help you open your eyes and consciousness to the subtle things as well.